Okay, here we go. I'm not going to beat around the bush anymore. We got 2 packs of Wisdom of Sea and Sky. We have to use the Pokemon we get out of these packs on our team. That's it. No exceptions. Unless this goes really, really poorly, which it could, I will open up a 3rd pack, but we're going to try and keep it to 2. Make it a bit more of a challenge for myself. Here we go. First pack, Wisdom of Sea and Sky. I have not really opened any of these at all of the new set. The first one, we get Lugia EX out of the first card. That's pretty insane. Okay, I mean, that helps out a lot. We get a Sneasel, not sure if that's acquirable, but that's fine. A Smeargle, a Pokemon I never ever really use. Remoraid, and a Murkrow, and a Pichu as the last one. Interesting first pack. There's definitely some Pokemon we can use. Kind of nice. You know what? I like it. I like it. Those in the decks. And move on to the second pack. Wisdom of Sea and Sky, Lugia. Go with this bad boy here. Rip that open. We get a Cherubi. Oh boy, interesting. Don't even know if we can get that before the Elite Four, but that's fine. We get an Absol, a Magikarp, very good there. That's basically a Gyarados, and an Emolga, which obviously we cannot get in that game, and a Sunflora. Interesting second pack, and just as a bonus, this is not going to count towards the actual challenge. I want to keep this nice and short, get you into the gameplay. Let's just open up a bonus one here. We've got the Hourglasses. Boom. Oh, it's complete dog shit. Okay. Well, let's skip through that. Let's get into the gameplay here. Here we go. Now, sorry to tease you, but there are a few items I'd like to get out of the way before we start. Mainly just discussing how using this team is going to work. Essentially, I will be allowed 2 encounters to start, then 1 encounter after each gym in the order I pulled them from my packs. I will not be allowed to use Lugia because unfortunately the Water Sea Dragon, who actually isn't a water type, would make this game ever so slightly too easy. This challenge will not be a hardcore nuzlocke either. However, I will be playing on set mode, I will not be over-leveling the next gym leader, and only held items are allowed. I'm definitely down to do the same challenge as a hardcore nuzlocke in the future, so if that's something you'd like to see, let me know in the comments. Now that everyone has had a chance to like and subscribe, I will stop wasting your time and get right into this challenge. I'm sure everyone knows the drill by now with the professor talking to us and the picking of our starters, so I'll skim right over all that nonsense. Needless to say, I did not pull any of these starters from my pack, so we'll grab a Totodile as a rental. After making it to Mr. Pokemon's house, we get a concerning phone call from Professor Elm and rush home to deal with it because for some reason it falls on an 11-year-old to solve felonies in the Pokemon universe. We're stopped on the way home by a mysterious stranger and are challenged to a fight. We brush the boy off, then head back to the lab to give the name of the stranger to the police, who I'm sure will apprehend the criminal in good time. We name our rival Skylar and continue on to the catching tutorial, after which we acquire Pokeballs and can finally catch our real starter. Miraculously, we find a Sneasel, completely legitimately, and I captured and name it Walter. I train Sneasel up a bit, then take him to Sprout Tower to push around an old man. After we win the fight, I can challenge the first gym at last. Faulkner is pretty straightforward as he only has 2 Pokemon, none of which are particularly strong, so I don't even bother catching our second starter, Smeargle. Luckily, Sneasel wipes through Pidgey and Pidgeotto and I receive the first gym badge. After the battle, I head down to Route 32 to look for our next encounter, Smeargle. I magically find one, then capture it and name it Jessie. I've never actually used Smeargle, and it's a super interesting Pokemon, so I'm definitely looking forward to giving it a go in this run. I make it to Azalea Town, and after a quick detour down the Slowpoke well, I run through the tall grass and find our next team member, Remoraid. I capture it, name it Hank, and unfortunately I make an extremely grave mistake. I accidentally overlevel Walter, meaning Hank and Jessie are the only Pokemon I can legitimately use here. Jessie still only knows Sketch, so he's not exactly the most useful at the moment. I don't think this battle against Bugsy is even remotely possible at this point, but after some time training Hank up, I'm finally ready to head to the gym. Our opponent is the bug user Bugsy, and holy shit, I was absolutely not prepared for what was about to happen. Bugsy has 3 Pokemon, the first of which is a Scyther that will always use U-turn. Since Scyther is faster than Hank, I think we're just straight up screwed right away, and that is indeed what happens. I go right back in for attempt 2 and manage to survive the U-turn on 8 HP and get off a pitifully weak Aurora Beam. I decide I may as well throw Jessie onto the team and see what happens, so I do exactly that, and attempt 3 begins. I stick with a familiar strategy of using Aurora Beam first, except this time I switch to Jessie to eat the U-turn. Needless to say, Jessie gets KO'd and Hank's still no match for Scyther. I refuse to admit defeat just yet, so I march right back in for yet another attempt. This time goes no better, and if that still wasn't enough, I try it one more time and achieve the same result yet again. This is where I have to call it quits and reset my game to hopefully get a better result on attempt 2. Basically, no over-leveling our starter. Attempt 2 begins virtually the same way as attempt 1 with a few key differences. Most notably, our team now consists of Walter the Sneasel, Jessie the Remoraid, and Jane the Smeargle, all of which have been carefully kept below the level cap of 17 this time. Having Walter at our disposal this time will hopefully allow us to defeat Bugsy and move on past the second gym. Anyways, Bugsy sends in Scyther and I lead with Walter. I go for Feint Attack hoping I can tank a U-turn on the next turn, but I absolutely cannot cannot, and Walter gets KO'd. I send in Jesse to clean up Metapod, and Bugsy sends Scyther right back in to hit us with yet another devastating U-turn. Jesse heals a bit with a Citrus Berry, then takes care of Kakuna with a few Aurora Beams. Last but not least, we have to face Scyther. I'll spare you the agony of watching Scyther decimate my team once again to send us right back to the Pokemon Center, where I am now on a first-name basis with Nurse Joy. I run it back immediately after, and to my surprise, we get absolutely dummied once again. The next attempt, we get extremely close, but Scyther has what I can only assume is 1 HP, and I fall short nonetheless. It's finally time for me to change something up. Now, obviously, my access to TMs at this point is extremely limited, so the only thing I can think of is to level ourselves as close as possible to level 18, so we level up during the battle and get the extra stat boost. It's not the most earth-shatteringly clever plan of all time, but it's the only plan I can think of. Once I feel I've done absolutely all I can, I head back to the Azalea gym to face Bugsy, and hopefully this is the last time. I lead with Jane to tank the oncoming U-turn, and I'm able to get a quick attack off beforehand. Jane survives on 5 HP, and Bugsy sends in Metapod. I switch to Walter and power through the Metapod as quickly as I can. Walter levels up to 18, and the big bad Scyther reappears. I switch to Jesse, hoping Scyther would use U-turn, but it goes for Focus Energy instead. Now I decide to switch Jane back in, and unfortunately I have to sacrifice her as Bugsy goes for Quick Attack. I was hoping to have Scyther out of the fight at this point, so I'm beginning to lose hope. I throw Walter back out and go for Feint Attack, which does some pretty good damage as well as triggers the Citrus Berry. This is where the astonishing happens. Instead of a free KO with U-turn, Scyther uses Leer, allowing us to use Feint Attack once more. The Pokemon gods were looking out for us as the Feint Attack gets a crit as well and takes Scyther right out. This means we have both Walter and Jesse available to take out a measly Kakuna, and needless to say, that is no problem at all. After the fight, I stand in front of Bugsy completely stunned. This has definitely been the hardest fight of any challenge I've attempted so far, and I still can't believe Bugsy used Leer with Scyther just because he felt bad for dummying us so many times. But I've never been one to decline handouts, so I will absolutely take it. We can finally move past the second gym and really get into the meat of this game. With our level cap increased to 19, I pop down the Slowpoke well once more to find our next team member, Murkrow. I capture the little guy and name him Hank. Next, I try to head west out of Azalea Town, but Skylar stops us and asks us why we don't come home until late at night, and I don't feel like telling the truth, so I battle her instead. The fight is not too difficult at all, as Walter is a pretty good counter to Croconaw, and Jesse can clean up the rest of Skylar's team with ease. I can now make it all the way to Goldenrod City, where generally the most feared gym leader lives. This is of course Whitney and her Miltank. We don't have any super effective moves at this point, and rollout will be quite dangerous for both Walter and Hank, so I'm basically just hoping and praying this won't be another Bugsy fiasco. At any rate, I enter the gym and begin the battle with Whitney. She leads with Clefairy and I send out Hank. I go for Wing Attack, which hits pretty hard. After a weak double slap, I KO Clefairy with another Wing Attack. Whitney's second and final Pokemon is her Miltank, and I can feel my butt clenching as this thing comes out. Unfortunately, due to Hank's masculinity, he gets attracted immediately and gets immobilized. Hank subsequently gets stomped on for quite a bit of damage, but Citrus Berry heals him back up to over half. Hank gets immobilized a second time, so I decide to swap him out for Jane. I try to chip away at Miltank with Quick Attack, but eventually I get low and decide to switch to Walter. Miltank finally goes for rollout, and I can't survive many of these, so Walter comes out yet again, and I send out Jane to sacrifice her. Now I send out Jesse, and I'm hit by a massive rollout. After healing a bit, I can finally try to damage Miltank again, but a Psybeam does a pathetic amount of damage. Finally, Miltank misses a rollout, and I can hit it with another Psybeam. This means Miltank can stomp us and KO Jesse, and that is exactly what happens. I send Walter back in and go for Feint Attack, which gets it into the deep yellow, but Miltank just heals back up with Milk Drink. I change up the strategy to using Screech to lower Miltank's defense. Walter gets attracted on the next turn, but he doesn't give two shits about love and hits Miltank with another Screech. Stomp does some good damage, and I don't want to risk being in love with Miltank anymore, so I swap back to Hank. Unfortunately, this means Hank will get KO'd by Stomp, but at least I'm free to send Walter back in. With Miltank's immensely lower defense, a single Feint Attack is plenty enough to knock out Miltank and win us our third badge on the first attempt. Whitney throws her famous tantrum after losing, and after she settles, we acquire our badge. Defeating Whitney allows us to access the Pokeathlon Dome, where we need to go in order to buy a Dusk Stone. It's quite unfortunate that a stone costs 3,000 points, so after a lengthy time farming, I purchase the Dusk Stone and immediately evolve Hank into Honchkrow. This is a huge addition to our team, and Hank will be key for the remainder of the game. I pop over to the National Park to find another member of our team, and that member is of course Pichu, which I capture and name Holly. Now I desperately wish that I pulled Pikachu or Raichu because I could have skipped the friendship evolution for Pichu, but unfortunately I was not that lucky, so I immediately get to running with Pichu in order to evolve it. I do about as much as I can stomach before getting bored and heading to the Burn Tower in Ecruteak. I came to see the legendary Pokemon Zoo, but instead Skylar is there and bothers us with another challenge. We have overall pretty good type matchups, so Ghastly, Croconaw, and Zubat go down quite easily, and Skylar skips out for now. I decide the team is perfect pretty much ready to take on Morty now, so I make my way through a few gym trainers before Holly surprises me and evolves into Pikachu. Jessie hops on the evolution train too, and now we have an Octillery. I finally reach Morty, and I undoubtedly feel the most confident I've ever felt going into this fight. Morty leads with Ghastly, and I send out Walter. On the first turn, I outspeed and go for Feint Attack, which is an easy KO. Morty sends in Gengar next, and a Feint Attack ain't broke, so a couple more of those knocks out Gengar. This guy's third Pokemon is Haunter, and yet another Feint Attack is more than enough to KO that. The game designers weren't feeling too creative when designing Morty's team, so he just has another Haunter. Of course, Feint Attack is plenty to take out his last Haunter and win us our 4th gym badge. After leaving the gym, I waste no time in getting my next team member, Cherubi. I capture it and name it Mike. Our current level cap is 31, so we can immediately evolve Mike into Cherrim. The next thing I need to acquire is a Thunderstone, which we will need to evolve Pikachu into Raichu. The easiest way to do so is to play even more of the godforsaken Pokeathlon. After some more grind time, I get the Thunderstone, but hold off on evolving Pikachu for now so we can get the proper moveset. I have a run-in with Lance at the Lake of Rage, and he asks us for some help dealing with Team Rocket. We then get the infamous scene of him absolutely obliterating this poor shop attendant with Hyper Beam. After aimlessly wandering around the HQ for some time, I finally gain access to the final room where Petrel is waiting to challenge us. Jesse handles his Zubat, Coughing, and Raticate with ease. Now all we have to do is follow his Murkrow conveniently right to the machine where its voice opens the door. Before we can go in and shut the machine down, Ariana comes out of nowhere and challenges Lance and I. This battle is extremely underwhelming. All we have to do is defeat some Electrodes, and Team Rocket is finally taken care of for now. Now is finally the time for us to head to Olivine City, and Skylar has beaten us there somehow. She mentioned something about Ted, and I didn't quite catch it, but I take a trip to the lighthouse to forget her. This is where Jasmine, the gym leader, is, and she needs us to go grab a potion to cure the sick Ampharos. We really don't have a choice in the matter, so I hop aboard the SS Jessie and set out for Cianwood City. I head into the pharmacy to grab the potion, and since I'm in town, I decide I better check out the gym scene. I figure at this point my team is looking pretty solid and Chuck shouldn't be an issue at all, so I go right for the challenge. Chuck begins the battle with Primeape and I throw in Hank. Primeape goes for double team and I hit it with a wing attack that does huge damage and KOs Primeape immediately. Chuck's next Pokemon is a Poliwrath and I take a body slam before hitting it with the wing attack treatment as well. It's not quite enough to KO in one hit, so we have to simply just wait one more turn before sending another one, which is more than enough to KO. Chuck only has 2 Pokemon for some reason, so that's a wrap for the 5th gym. Probably the easiest fight thus far, but no complaints here. After the fight, if you can even call it that, I go back to the mainland to find our next team member, Absol. I capture our new friend and name it Saul. I also figure it's about time to use our hard-earned Thunderstone and evolve Holly into Raichu. My team is actually looking pretty great right now, so I think we need to test it out on another poor gym leader. The best victim I can find is Price, so I head over to his gym and challenge him. Now he is considered an ice type user, but most of his team also has water typing, so I throw at Holly. I take a couple of turns to set up Nasty Plot, then I finally fire off a Thunderbolt. There is no doubt that this Thunderbolt is more than sufficient to KO Seal. Next out is Piloswine, and I'm outsped and hit with a spicy Ice Fang. A Citrus Berry gets us back in the yellow, and I use a Focus Blast in retaliation, which misses of course. This is where I'm hit with a Blizzard, and there is no question here, Holly goes down. I decide to give Walter a try, so he comes in next. I trade Feint Attacks for Mud Bombs for a few turns until we burn one of Price's Hyper Potions. This means we're free to keep tossing Feint Attacks and take out Piloswine. Last up is Price's Ace Dugong. Walter is still a little low, so I choose to swap him out. I throw in Jesse instead and am hit with a not very effective Aurora Beam. I go for Psybeam when I can, and it ends up doing quite a bit less damage than I had hoped. Dugong's favorite move seems to be Aurora Beam, so we trade attacks constantly for a few turns. Dugong switches up and uses Rest, and I keep firing Psybeams. Eventually, I get the confusion, so hopefully this speeds up the damage process. I push Dugong down into the deep red, but Price has access to another full restore, so he obviously uses that. Sometimes I wish gym leaders had to use Nuzlocke rules, but I guess not. At any rate, I literally do the exact same thing I did before, and after a few minutes, I KO Dugong and collect our gym badge. I've got to take a little detour to the Lake of Rage in order to capture our next team member, Magikarp. I name him Steve, and oh boy was this a huge addition to the squad. Once Steve is adequately acclimated to his new home, I evolve him into a big, beautiful Gyarados. I make a super fast pit stop at the Olivine Lighthouse and give Jasmine her medicine. Isn't it a little bit depressing that this Ampharos has to sit in a lighthouse for all of eternity while it's used simply for its ability to create light? Anyways, no time to worry about that now, as I have other way more important matters to attend to. The most important being heading to Route 47 to do double battles. See, Jane can be incredibly useful if we teach it the right moves. Saul knows Swords Dance, so if we can get into a battle and have Jane sketch Swords Dance off Saul, we should have a very important setup move for Jane to use. Our sketch strategy works to a T, and we now have 1 move down and 3 to go. The next part of my master plan involves capturing a Sentret, but I'll explain more about that later. First, I'm feeling ready to take on Jasmine, so I go into the gym and do just that. She leads leads with Magnemite and I throw out Holly. I get paralyzed and confused, which is not a good combo, and after trying to break through and failing miserably, I finally connect with a Focus Blast and KO Magnemite. Jasmine sends in another Magnemite and Holly hangs on with 4 HP before taking it out with Focus Blast. Last up is Steelix and I'm expecting an Earthquake, so I swap to Hang. I actually get hit with a Rock Throw, which is less than ideal, so I retaliate with a Wing Attack to break Steelix's sturdy. I switch to Steve and begin spamming Aqua Tails. It takes quite some time, but after burning both Hyper Potions, Aqua Tail finally takes Steelix out and we win ourselves yet another gym badge. Now comes the most dreaded part of this game: beating Team Rocket for good. There are just so many grunt fights for no apparent reason, but I guess we don't have a choice. I skillfully avoid as many of the grunts as possible before we come face to face with Petrel again. We defeat him easily and he gives us a basement key. For some extraordinarily odd reason, there's a kimono girl in the basement and she hits us with a spin move before leaving. I use our new key, and before I can continue the grunt fest, Skylar comes barging in and we have to battle her first. Skylar keeps getting easier and easier, so we take her out with no problem, then continue with the Team Rocket bullshit. After a countless amount of time in the basement, I find the kidnapped Radio Man and he rewards us with, yet another key. This is not the most creative storytelling, but oh well. I head right on back to the radio tower where I bust my way up to the top and find myself face to face with Archer, Team Rocket's new leader. He challenges us to a battle and leads with Houndour. I send in Steve and immediately use Aqua Tail, which is a no doubt one-hit KO. Next up is Houndoom, and Aqua Tail is definitely enough for another KO, so we're in good shape. Archer sends in Coughing next, and an Ice Fang plus Aqua Tail knocks it out super easily, and that's it. That's the whole battle. Kind of unfortunate that the big bad boss of Team Rocket absolutely sucks in this game. Archer then just simply gives up for good and disbands Team Rocket on the spot. It's kind of hilarious that Pokemon battles deal with huge issues like criminal gangs disbanding, but welcome to the world of Pokemon, I guess. I head into Ice Path next when something absolutely magical happens. According to the Shiny Claws, I can use this guy on our team, so that's a very nice surprise. This is only like the 3rd shiny I've ever found in the wild accidentally, so I'm quite excited to use this thing. I capture the Swinub and name it Gus. Yet again, there's a kimono girl here, and we assist her in getting out of the cave before following her out. The next thing I do is head back to Route 47 with our new Furret in order to teach Jane Baton Pass. For those who don't know, this means we'll be able to transfer all stat changes to a Pokemon of our choice. I then take some time to train up Gus and he evolves into Piloswine. Then after trading a Heart Scale to learn Ancient Power, Gus evolves into Mamoswine. After making some final preparations, I find myself face to face with Claire, the final gym leader. She leads with Gyarados and I send out Holly. I'm not worried at all as a quad effective Thunderbolt smokes Gyarados. Next up is Dragonair and I decide to switch to Jane. We get paralyzed, Aqua Tailed, then slammed, and Jane's pitiful stats are overwhelmed as she faints. I go with Gus next and an Ice Shard is almost enough to KO Dragonair. After missing 2 Ice Fangs and getting hit with Aqua Tail, Gus is a little too low, so I switch to Steve. Ice Fang is almost enough to KO, but with a lucky flinch we can fire off another one to force Claire to her second Dragonair. We give this one the same Ice Fang treatment, and before we know it, Claire is onto her last Pokemon, Kingdra. I'm hit with a Dragon Pulse before chipping away some of Kingdra's health with Dragon Rage. I sacrifice Steve and send Holly back in. A Thunderbolt does some decent damage and Kingdra heals a bit with a Citrus Berry. Holly gets hit with a powerful Hydro Pump before I'm able to fire off another Thunderbolt. One more Hydro Pump unfortunately spells the end for Holly. Claire uses a Hyper Potion and all I can do with Gus is chip away a tiny bit of damage before he too is taken out. Walter is up next and I get hit with a powerful Hydro Pump again. It does some huge damage and I'm definitely starting to get worried. Another Hydro Pump KOs Walter and now we're down to a good old-fashioned 1v1. I use one Aurora Beam and it's not quite enough to KO. Luckily my beautiful red octopus is bulky enough to tank a Hyper Beam, so I'm free to take out Kingdra with another Aurora Beam. This was definitely one of the more challenging fights of this run, so I'm happy to have it over with and done. Claire, however, is not happy for us at all and withholds the gym badge from us until we can pass some BS tests from the Elder in the Dragon Shrine. I go to the shrine to take the quiz, but the Elder seems to think there are right and wrong answers, so I end up just telling him exactly what he wants to hear. Claire barges in to make fun of us for failing, but to her surprise, we pass and she's forced to give us the 8th and final gym badge. On my way out of the shrine, I use the Double Battle Twins to teach Jane Nasty Plot. My next mission is to head back to Newbark Town to acquire a Master Ball from Professor Elm. We would typically use this to capture Lugia, but I'm not allowing myself to use it, so for this run, the Master Ball is just going to end up sitting around collecting dust. We also find out that the Kimono Girls wish to battle us, so promptly we head to Ecruteak City to find them. Each of them has a single evolution, meaning they are all pretty easy and not really worth spending time discussing. I completely and utterly eviscerate all of them, and as my reward, I'm given given the title bell. This is the last piece of the puzzle needed to face Lugia, so I meander over to the Whirl Islands and do just that. At the islands, we get the pleasure of witnessing a strange cult-like ritual, and Lugia shows itself at last. I defeat Lugia with Holly, and for whatever reason, the Kimono Girls chose to judge us for not capturing it. Perhaps they should focus more on training a diverse team rather than bitching to us about not capturing a legendary. I'm itching to become champion, so I head to Victory Road and begin traversing the cave. After making my way through Victory Road, we can see the light of the exit when Skylar jump scares us once more. Skylar leads with Sneasel and I send in Gus. As soon as I'm able to, I use Ancient Power, which does a little over half. Sneasel chips away a little more of my health before I'm able to fire off another Ancient Power and KO it. Skylar sends in for Alligator next, and I switch to Holly. I tank a Waterfall, which does a little over half, but for Alligator gets paralyzed at least. The subsequent Thunderbolt is just enough to knock out for Alligator. I definitely wasn't expecting that to happen at all, but I will definitely take it. Holly happens to already be in and is the perfect counter to Golbat, so a Thunderbolt is plenty to take it out. Skylar goes for Haunter and I decide to swap to Sol. I'm hit with a Shadow Ball, then a Confuse Ray, which is not ideal at all, but I manage to break through the confusion and hit Haunter with a Sucker Punch. Obviously, it is super effective and takes Haunter out. Next up is Magneton, and none of my moves are very effective, so I switch to Gus. I use Ancient Power for some reason here. Maybe I thought it had Sturdy, but there's an equal chance that I'm just stupid. At any rate, I smarten up on the next turn and hit Magneton with a detrimental Earthquake. This of course KOs, and Skylar sends in his last Pokemon, Kadabra. Gus survives a Psybeam on 5 HP and fires off an Earthquake. Kadabra is quite a glass cannon, so the Earthquake is enough to KO and win us the final pre-Elite Four rival battle. This means we can enter the Pokemon League and make our final preparations for the Elite Four. My confidence level is much higher in this run than in previous challenges, so I'm hopeful the next 5 battles go smoothly. My first challenge is Will the Psychic User. Thankfully, we have plenty of Dark type options, so this should be a breeze. His first Pokemon is Xatu, and I send in Jane. I begin setting up Swords Dance as Xatu goes for Confuse Ray, but I came prepared and heal with a Person Berry. After one more Swords Dance, Jane is hit with a U-turn. I decide not to try Swords Dance again and instead Baton Pass to Hank. I use Night Slash as soon as I can, and it's an easy one-hit KO. Up next is Executor, and we get a crit with Night Slash. I don't think the crit was particularly necessary, however I'll take it anyways. Needless to say, Executor faints, and that's 2 of Will's Pokemon down. I spam the A button a few more times when Slowbro comes out, and the Night Slash easily deals with it. Xatu comes back in, but not for long, as yet another Night Slash KOs. Last up is another Xatu, and I'll give you the chance to guess what happens next. Okay, you got your guess? Good. If you guessed Night Slash, you're absolutely correct. That is it for quite possibly the easiest fight in the entire game. I take my winnings from Will and head on to the next chamber where Koga is waiting for us. Without much talking, the battle begins and our first test is Ariados. I lead with Jane once again and set up Swords Dance. A Poison Jab gets me a little too low for comfort, so I use Baton Pass and send in Gus. A Poison Jab tickles a little, so I send off an Earthquake in retaliation. This is of course plenty to remove the spider from the battle. Koga throws out Fortress next, and I break it sturdy with Ice Shard. Fortress gets one shot at us and decides to use Toxic Spikes. Colossal waste of a turn there, but I in no way plan on taking Gus out if I can help it. The rest of the battle is not very worth it to watch, so I'll just show you the final moments for Venomoth, Muck, and Crobat. May as well call them Victor, Lalo, and Eladio. Certain few who understand my nickname pattern will understand that one. At any rate, Koga is defeated, and now we're halfway through the Elite Four. Our next test is Bruno, the fighting type user. The battle begins and Bruno leads with Hitmontop. I send out Hank and immediately go with Fly. It connects easily and is a no-doubt KO with the crit. Up next for Bruno is a Hitmonchan. I get hit with a very powerful Thunder Punch, but luckily we survive it and go for another Fly. It's another no-doubt one-hit KO, so I'm in good spirits. My good mood is crushed pretty fast though as Bruno sends in Onyx. I decide my best option is to swap out Hank and send in Jane. I set up Swords Dance and then I'm hit with a scary Earthquake. That plus Sandstorm leaves us really low, but fortunately I'm able to use Baton Pass and send in Steve. I completely avoid an oncoming Earthquake and then use Ice Fang to break Onyx's Sturdy. It does a lot more damage than I was expecting and forces Bruno to use a full restore. The next turn I fire off Waterfall and it too KOs Onyx. Bruno's next Pokemon is Machamp and I choose to use another attack boosted Waterfall to see if it'll KO, but it ends up leaving Machamp in the very deep red. This is of course really bad for us as Machamp uses the opportunity to go for Rock Slide, which gets a very unlucky crit. This means Steve goes down and we have our first death of the entire Elite Four so far. At least this means we get a safe swap to Hank and we're much faster than Machamp, so a Wing Attack is all it takes to remove Machamp from the battle. Bruno's last team member is Hitmonlee and I make yet another detrimental mistake. Hitmonlee uses High Jump Kick, which regrettably connects, meaning Hank goes down in a very avoidable situation. I decide decide the next best option is to send in Holly and use Charm to severely lower Hitmonlee's attack. I go through numerous copy and paste turns before Hitmonlee gets to -6 attack, and I feel it's safe to switch to Gus. I take a couple of high jump kicks to the face before finally using Earthquake. It does just enough to KO and win us the fight, meaning our only obstacle now is the final Elite Four member, Karen. She tries to threaten us as the baddest woman in Johto, but we're here to claim that title all for ourselves. The battle begins, Karen leading with Umbreon and I with Jane. I'm able to get off not one, not two, but 3 Swords Dances before baton passing to Steve. This is disastrous news for Karen, as a +6 attack boosted Gyarados is one of the scarier things in the Pokemon universe. At this point, I kick my feet up and just watch as Steve mows down each and every individual member of Karen's team with ease. She stands by helplessly as her last Pokemon falls, and she's forced to bestow the title of baddest bitch in Johto onto us. After a few more words of encouragement, I step into the champion's chamber and march on up to Lance. The champion of Johto leads with Gyarados, and the lowly challenger leads with Holly. I figure it best to get rid of Gyarados ASAP, so I throw a quad-effective Thunderbolt, which is plenty to take it out. Next out is the first of a few Dragonites. I stick it out with Holly to use Charm and hopefully mitigate some Outrage damage. I get to use Charm once more before an Outrage leaves us on 3 HP, but luckily Dragonite gets confused. This is where opportunity comes knocking, and I switch into Steve and begin setting up Dragon's Dance. After 2 turns of Dragon's Dance and 1 missed Ice Fang, a single Ice Fang hits and takes Dragonite out. Up next is Aerodactyl, and I leave Steve in, obviously. 1 singular Ice Fang is more than enough to KO Aerodactyl as well. Lance sends out yet another Dragonite, and yet another Ice Fang KOs. Second to last Pokemon is, yep, you guessed it, another Dragonite. But it really doesn't matter because you probably guessed it again. Ice Fang takes it out. His last Pokemon is a poor Charizard. I say poor because it's gonna have to be clobbered mercilessly by a waterfall. That's Lance done and dusted, and an extraordinarily easy fight. I get to take a nice long look at our winning team and notice that Saul actually was on the team but never saw a second of action in the entire Elite Four and Champion battles. I guess he's the member of the group project that spends the entire time flirting with the female members and collects the A at the end. Now some of you may be wondering why I'm not celebrating and more happy that we've beat the game, but this is where Heart Gold and Soul Silver is pretty awesome, because you can play against the entire Kanto gym leaders and the final boss of this game, Red, and that is our mission to beat. I take only a few moments to admire the team that's got us this far before immediately flying to Olivine City to take the ferry to Kanto. Psych! I actually have some unfinished business in Johto I need to take care of first. You see, upon completion of the Pokemon League, we gain access to the Battle Frontier. I'd usually completely ignore the Frontier, but if I want to unlock the full potential of my team, I'm gonna have to do some things I don't want to do. This includes grinding the Frontier until we can acquire the Razor Claw. This item will allow Walter to evolve into Weevil, which is a massive upgrade. I get to work grinding, and after a couple of painful hours of stupidly easy battles, I acquire a Razor Claw and hand it to Walter. All I have to do is level him up at night while he's holding it, and before long we finally have a Weevil. With that out of the way, I feel like our team is in good enough place to begin challenging the gym leaders in Kanto, so first up is Lieutenant Surge. He leads with Raichu, and I send out Jane. Raichu spends the first few turns spamming double teams, and I set up 2 Swords Dances. Once I am able, I use Baton Pass and Gus enters the ring. I use an Earthquake, which immediately decimates Raichu. Magneton is up next, and I use Ice Shard to break its sturdy. I miss 1 Earthquake, then I'm hit with a powerful Magnet Bomb, but luckily we survive and unleash the Quake. Magneton is KO'd, and Surge throws out Electrode. Gus, being the unstoppable machine he is, crushes Electrode with yet another Earthquake. Next on the chopping block is Electabuzz, and unfortunately I completely forgot this thing knows Low Kick, so with our speed disadvantage and how heavy Gus is, Electabuzz goes first and takes him out. I send Saul in hopefully to clean up, and anticipating a low kick, I use Sucker Punch. This works incredibly well as I get a crit and Electabuzz goes down. Surge's last team member is another Electrode, and we both set up for a few turns. He with Double Team and I with Swords Dance. I finally feel ready to attack and use Night Slash. The attack boost pays off, and the Night Slash is a one-hit KO. The battle is over, and Lieutenant Surge has no choice but to hand us our first Kanto Gym badge. Thankfully, in the post-game of Heart Gold and Soul Silver, there isn't really any story story side quests that impede your progression so I can immediately travel to Saffron City to battle Sabrina. She starts the battle with Espeon and I send out Jane. Now unfortunately we are slower than Espeon and Jane's shitty stats allow us to get KO'd by a single Psychic. I begin to set up 3 Swords Dances, then after taking a few hits I unleash a Night Slash against Espeon and it's a no question KO. Next out is Alakazam, and I hate to say Saul is actually slower so he gets taken out by an Energy Ball. Luckily we have a slew of other options for this battle and I go with Hank this time. I connect with a crit Night Slash right away and even Reflect can't protect Alakazam from being KO'd. Sabrina's last Pokemon is Mr. Mime and it is no match for our onslaught of Night Slashes. It goes down after a couple of turns and Sabrina awards us the Marsh Badge for beating her. The next leader we need to face is the grass user Erica. Again, her team does not scare me in any way, shape, or form, so I'm hoping this is a quick one. Her lead Pokemon is Jumpluff and you guessed it, I send out Jane. She goes first and uses U-turn, which allows her to send in Victreebel instead, and I go for Swords Dance. I elect to go for the safe play and baton pass to Steve, not wanting to lose the +2 attack. Steve gets hit with a very powerful Grass Knot, but I retaliate with Ice Fang and knock out Victreebel. Up second is Tangela, and it gets the exact same Ice Fang treatment. Third is Blossom, and by now the pattern has been established. Down it goes to Ice Fang. Her last Pokemon Jumpluff comes out as well, and just as we all expected, she goes down to Ice Fang. That is a nice, clean, easy sweep for Steve as we claim the Rainbow Badge from Erica. I immediately head right to Fuchsia City to challenge Janine, and I'm not sure if my computer was overheating trying to record this or something, but the beginning of this battle goes about 1 frame per second, so I'll skip to the interesting part. To summarize the beginning, Holly gets confused, misses every single turn, then goes down to hurting itself. Out comes Gus and I hit Crobat with an Ice Fang. It is more than enough to KO. In fact, it's more than enough to KO the entire rest of her team. For whatever silly reason, the gym leader's levels are completely bonkers in Kanto. Like, Janine is underleveled compared to Bruno's team, and I don't know how I never noticed this growing up, but I guess that's not too much we can do about it now. But seriously, why do the first 4 leaders in Kanto have higher level caps than the last 4? This probably should have been thought out much better. Shame on you, Game Freak. The only side quest we need to do in the post game comes at this point. I have to catch a thief that stole a part from the power plant. That's it. It takes about 5 minutes to complete, then we can move on to interrupting Misty's Tinder date. She gets quite angry but still accepts her gym challenge. The battle begins and Misty leads with Golduck. I lead with, hold on, Mike? That's right. Mike reappears on the squad for this one. I start by using Sunny Day as Golduck goes for Psychic. It doesn't do very much, so I'm free to use Leech Seed and Magical Leaf until Golduck is all taken care of. Next up is Lapras. The Ice type is a little scary for Mike, so I decide to switch Jane in to take a hit. She ends up getting put to sleep, so that's a little unfortunate. I try to stick it out for a few turns with Jane, but end up swapping to Jessie. I don't know why I even put Jessie in, as I pretty much switched to Holly right away. I get hit by a few body slams before I'm finally able to break through and hit Lapras with Thunderbolt. Too bad it's not enough to KO, and Holly goes down to a Water Pulse. I give Steve a go next and use Dragon Dance twice before using Bite. This is more than enough to KO Lapras, which means Misty is down to her second last Pokemon, Starmie. Steve's attack and speed is still heavily boosted, so we move first and knock Starmie out with a single Bite. All I have to deal with now is a single Quagsire, and a couple of good old-fashioned Ice Fangs seals the deal with Quagsire. At any rate, we acquire the Cascade Badge from Misty. After leaving Cerulean City, I can finally make my way past a large object that seems to have fallen asleep directly in my path. I did not pull Snorlax from my packs, and I got bored of fighting it really quickly, so I just ran away. Now that Tubby is gone, I can access Pewter City Gym, where the leader B-Rock is waiting for us. I step up and challenge him, and he graciously accepts. He throws out Graveler, and I send in good old Jane. We all know the drill by now. Swords Dance, Baton Pass, Steve, Waterfall, Dead Graveler, and I sure as shit thought that I'd be able to pull the same stunt for the rest of the battle, but sadly Omastar and Ancient Power had other plans for Steve, so I have to pivot to Mike. I set up Sunny Day and Mike changes form. I use Growth a couple of times as Omastar does some weak damage to us, then I switch to offense and use Magical Leaf. Since this is quad effective, it is a no doubt KO. Brock sends out his world famous Onix next, and since I'm pretty much all set up with Mike, a single Magical Leaf takes Onix out. Next out is Kabutops, and I immediately have to set up Sunny Day once again to change forms. I am then hit with a pretty powerful Rock Slide, but since Mike refuses to back down from a fight, we use Magical Leaf and take down Kabutops. This means Brock is down to his last Pokemon, Rhyhorn. Mike uses another classic Magical Leaf, and just for good measure, we land a crit to KO Rhyhorn and win ourselves the Boulder Badge. I've begun to notice that recently Jane has become a little obsolete, so after the Brock fight, I give Jane a new move that is sure to be even more helpful to us in the long run. That move is, of course, Dragon Dance. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we come to the part of the game where you have a final epic showdown with your rival. This is supposed to be the hardest rival fight in the game, and as much as I'd like to go through and give an epic breakdown on how we barely defeat Skylar and win by the skin of our teeth, I simply can't. It would waste your time and mine, so instead I'll only show the most basic and important highlights from the fight. Holly, Focus Blast. Sneasel, dead. Holly, Thunderbolt. Feraligatr, dead. Holly, Thunderbolt, Golbat, dead. Holly, Thunderbolt, Alakazam, dead. Holly, Thunderbolt, Gengar, dead. Gus, Earthquake, Magneton, dead. Scudette, win. Bitch, Skylar, lose. And with that out of the way, I take a short detour to Pallet Town where I let myself into Red's house and start chatting up his mom. She basically has no idea if he's even alive anymore. Kind of a prick move not to contact your mom at all, but hopefully we'll get the chance to teach him some manners later on. I surf from Pallet Town down to Cinnabar Island, and it turns out it's been hammered by a volcano and the gym is no longer there. Blue is, however, and he decides to just be an asshole to us, so add another person to the list of individuals that needs some lessons in manners. He tells us we don't have enough gym badges to battle him, so I guess the only thing to do is go and get another one. Naturally, the residents of Cinnabar Island are not rebuilding their homes, but rather busy setting up a new gym in a cave. But luckily, the setting doesn't bother me too much, and Blaine's mustache does, so I charge right at him and start the battle. He only has 3 Pokemon, the first of which is Magcargo. I send in Jessie and use Surf first. It is of course a no-doubt KO. Next is Magmar, and it knows Thunder Punch, so I swap to Gus instead, which was an incredibly dumb decision, of course, as Magmar just uses Overheat and one-shots Gus. I decide that Blaine has disrespected me and my team quite enough, so I figure it's time to unleash the wrath of Steve. Last out is Rapidash, and even with our burn from Magmar's Flame Body, we crush Rapidash with a Waterfall and win the fight handedly. That means the Volcano badge is ours and only 2 fights remain in this entire game. We can confirm that Blue has changed his tune, so I immediately head to Viridian City for the showdown. He leads with Executor and I send out Hank. I go for Fly right away as Executor sets up Trick Room. The Fly connects and is a nice and tidy one-hit KO. Next up is Rhydon, and I decide to swap to Mike. Unfortunately, because Trick Room is still active, Mike gets completely obliterated by a Mega Horn. I send in Jessie next, and Trick Room is still active, so we get hit with a powerful Stone Edge first before using Surf, and thankfully we get the one-hit KO. Trick Room ends just in time as Blue's next Pokemon is Machamp. I try to do the smart thing and switch to Holly to bait her an Earthquake, then switch to Hank, who is immune, and to my surprise it actually works. This is right before I forget that Machamp has no guard and a Stone Edge almost completely flattens Hank. We get a connection with Fly and it's good enough for a one-hit KO, so we escape with the close call. Gyarados is next out and I decide to switch back to Holly. I'm hit with Return, but fortunately I'm able to get a Thunderbolt off, which is a quad effective and easily KOs Gyarados. Blue's second to last Pokemon is Arcanine, and as much as it pains me to say it, Holly is no longer needed in this fight, so the best option is to sacrifice her. This allows us a safe switch to Steve and we can set up 6 Dragon Dances, then get sent out with Roar. After that colossal waste of time, Hank gets dragged in and taken out with extreme speed. Steve just comes right back in, and this time I skip the lollygagging and crush Arcanine with a Waterfall. Blue sends out his final Pokemon and it's his Pidgeot. We get one Ice Fang off that doesn't do as much as I'd hoped, then we're taken out with Return. The savior of this battle just so happens to be Gus, the shiny Mamoswine, and he comes into this battle and deals a devastating blizzard straight to Pidgeot's beak. Pidgeot goes down and we are victorious against Blue. I definitely made lots of mistakes in this battle, but overall it was the most fun I've had in a battle since probably Whitney? I don't know, anything is better than Bugsy. Blue reluctantly gives us the Earth badge for our victory, and I'm sure everyone watching now knows what time it is. It's probably a big reason you even clicked on this video in the first place. I'll just not say any more and let the intro to this final fight speak for itself. Red leads with his world-famous Pikachu and I with my shiny Mammoth. Pikachu gets to move first and hits us with a very strong Iron Tail. Gus retaliates with an Earthquake and it's more than enough to one-shot Pikachu. Next out is Blastoise and I choose to swap to Mike. I tank a Flash Cannon on the switch, but since I am slower I can't get a sunny day off in time and Blastoise KOs Mike with Blizzard. The benefit of sacking Mike means we get a safe switch to Holly and can set up a nasty plot right away. Blizzard from Blastoise isn't enough to take us out, so Holly fires off a boosted Thunderbolt and I watch Blastoise melt. Next out is Snorlax and Holly uses a quick Focus Blast. It's not quite enough to KO, so we're forced to eat a Crunch, which we luckily survive. This then allows me to fire off another Focus Blast, then a Thunderbolt to take out Snorlax. Up next is Lapras, which is a Pokemon I tend to always have difficulty with for some reason, but this time I get to move first, and yet another boosted Thunderbolt is more than enough to KO Lapras. Red is down to his remaining 2 Pokemon, and Charizard comes in first. I stick with the same strategy I've been using, and Thunderbolt also one-hit KOs Charizard. Last up is Venusaur, and I can now finally say goodbye to Holly. Extremely ironic that we used the evolved version of Red's main Pokemon to wipe out the vast majority of his team. Maybe if he called his mom for once, he could have been warned about this, but I guess we will never know. As Holly's last play, I lower Venusaur's attack with Charm as a Sludge Bomb knocks us out. Thankfully, due to Holly's sacrifice, all I have to do is send out Hank, use Fly, and watch Venusaur's health completely deplete. Red can't even bring himself to say congratulations as he flees from the scene. I hope he's going to give his mother a call. The credits roll for the final time, and this means I've done it. I beat the entire game and post-game of Pokemon SoulSilver using only Pokemon I pull from Wisdom of Sea and Sky packs. I sincerely hope you enjoyed watching this video, and if you made it all the way to this point, then you're absolutely the true MVP, and the real reason why I love making these videos. Thank you so unbelievably much for watching, and I hope you join me for our next playthrough, whatever that may be. Now enjoy some more of this banging credits theme.